T-34 NATOPS Preflight. It will supplement the material already contained in both your NATOPS and your NATOPS T-34 course book. The T-34 Charlie is an unpressurized, two-place cannon cockpit, low-wing, single-engine monoplane manufactured by Beech Aircraft in Kansas City. It's powered by a Pratt & Whitney PT6 Alpha-25 turboprop engine. Inverted flight capabilities are provided. It's flat rated at 550 shaft horsepower, but for our purposes at 10-15 foot-pounds, it's rated at 450 shaft horsepower. The wingspan is 33 feet 5 inches, the length is 28 feet 8 inches, and the height from the ground to the top of the vertical stab is 9 foot 11 inches. The basic weight is 2,970 pounds. Our maximum taxi weight is 4,325 pounds, with a max takeoff and landing weight of 4,300 pounds. All this information and a pre-flight inspection checklist are found in your NATOPS. The video is not intended to take the place of pre-flight practice. Each student should take time to become personally familiar with the T-34 and go down to the flight line and practice pre-flights. However, we hope that this tape will help answer some of your questions concerning the pre-flight before they arise.
Prior to pre-flighting, you want to make sure that you know the dyno-electron and determine what airplane is being used on the deadline for pre-flight practice. Also, you need to check out a cranial whenever you're around the aircraft on the deadline. As you approach the aircraft, you want to determine if there's any obvious problems with the airplane before you actually begin your pre-flight. Prior to pre-flighting the cockpit, you want to make sure that you have your cranial on and your pocket checklist out. Then you want to go ahead and open both cockpits, climbing up on the wing, the canopy open handle, not the emergency open. And then you're ready for the cockpit pre-flight inspection.
Yeah. Ready? Alright, once you're on top of the aircraft, you take out your pre-flight checklist and go through each item. First item, canopy and windscreen. Make sure your canopy has no major dents, dings, cracks, etc. You come to the back, there has to be a first aid kit installed. Come back up in front, and we check our 3-yard temperature probe installed. This is the only place it's located on the aircraft. You're going to be sitting in back, so during the flight you're going to have to ask the instructor pilot what the outside air temperature is. Next we go to the parachute. The pre-flight of the parachute is very important. Well, we bring the parachute, you lay it down. You make sure all these snaps are in place. Take out the bottom part here and check that this thin thread is not broken and through the bottom lanyard. Bring it back up and go ahead and set your parachute up. For you big guys, I would suggest you open it all the way up so that'll facilitate when you get into the aircraft. Open the straps up. Make sure everything is open. Take these straps here. Run them up through the top of your release handle. That way you'll be able to sit in and get it in tight. Next is the ELT. Now we've come back up into the front cockpit. The next item is the emergency locator transmitter, ELT. It's this orange box located on the left-hand side toward the rear of the front cockpit. You check here is make sure this cable is attached. The folding antenna is located in here, and the switch is in the center position, the arm position. Restraint harness on your actual harness here. Come down the side. Make sure when you lock the harness is actually locked. And then release it again. And moving up to the trim tabs want to be positioned on pre-flight 0, which is in the green, 0, also in the green, and 0 again for pre-flight. That is not the same as for takeoff, where we want 0, 3 up, and 0. Landing gear handle, you check it down. It does have a safety feature, but you never move this handle up on the ground for any reason. Do not check to see if it works. Accelerometer? Yeah. The accelerometer want to make sure that it's within limits. +4.5 to -2.3, which this one is, and then the floating needle should be in the center. You want to check now the start panel on the right to make sure the starter is off. Moving across the panel, we come up and make sure our starter switch is off, the ignition switch is wired on, and your auto ignition switch is off. Now, on the normal pre-flight, it says to go ahead at that time and turn the battery switch on. Do not do this. You only do that when you're actually going to go flying. So in this part of the pre-flight, you will not turn the battery switch on. The next item is the oxygen handle. Our oxygen panel we have wired on. The only way to turn the oxygen on or off is through this front cockpit handle. It will be up, it should be up on pre-flight. Do not replace this handle in the down position. There again, we'll put oxygen here. Any spark could be ignition problems. So for pre-flight, go ahead and leave this handle in the up position. Okay, next, after completing the oxygen, which is really NA for this part of your pre-flight, you'll come down and you must release the control lock. The control lock again is in the front cockpit. To unleash it, you reach down, you pull the lever, up. Before you do that, you're going to have to rotate these rudder pedals all the way down. You push down a little toggle switch and lift up and let it fall to the ground. That releases all your controls. At this time, we've completed the practice pre-flight cockpit portion. Now we'll move on to the exterior inspection of the aircraft. Alright, we've come down off the top of the aircraft, so according to Squadron Stand, we can't remove our cranials. At this time, following along in the external inspection, we check the top of the wing, making sure there's no major cracks, buckles, discrepancies with the top of the wing. Come back down onto the flap and check for flap movement. You won't feel any unnecessary excessive play. What's excessive? I'd say more than about a 1/4 inch. You probably want to ask that electron to nudge. At this point, we'll move back and underneath, and we'll come down into the underneath of the wing and check that our aft fuel drain, there's one on each wing, is not leaking. Now, if you push on these two dividers, you will drain fuel out. Do not do that. Come underneath and check that your tire has no shown marks on it. The gear door is stationary, and that all your brake lines in here, your hydraulic brake lines, are not leaking. At this point, you can also check the cotter key and all your nuts and slides. You can also look underneath into the fuel well here, or the wheel well, and check the lines and other things that are not leaking underneath here. Fuel lines, your control surface cables. We'll get some of this again when we come in from the front, but it doesn't hurt to take a look at it now. Now we'll move along to the other side, the outside of the aft end of the leading edge. Now, if you remember the first part of this, we moved the trim tabs to 0 for pre-flight. This enables us to check the servo action of the aileron trim. What you do is you move the aileron up, and the aileron trim tab should move down. You move it down, and it moves up. That checks the servo action. Next, we come inside. All right, coming inside, you have the aileron actuating rod and a bonding braid. This braid right here, you want to make sure that's securely attached, and also check inside here. There's a nut in here that needs to be lock wired. Now, all these, there's 1, 2, and 3, all need to be checked the same fashion. And for one final check on the aileron, you move the aileron up, you come back to the inboard side of it, and check this hinge pin secured, and run through this little hole back in here. That completes the aileron section. Work our way outbound on this left side of the aircraft. Check to make sure the static wicks are installed. There's 2 of those. Continue on the outside. It's a good time to check the top and bottom of the wing again for any major bending or abnormalities in the wing surface. You can get a real good look from top and bottom to see if there's any type of bows or anything else in that particular wing. pressure is installed and secured, and the two little holes that allow you to see that these lights are working at nighttime in the air are also clear and free of obstructions. It's kind of hard to talk like this. Then we move on to the front of the leading edge. Another good place to see that the leading edge is free of dents or any major bird strikes, etc., is from an angle back away from it. Now we're moving on over. We can come down and check that the wing tie-down is secure. Coming over here to the pitot heat, you can remove this. There's a hole here that wants to be unobstructed. There's also a small hole in the bottom that needs to be clean and free of obstruction. Do not put your hands on this and feel that you get your oil all over it. And following on to the rear of this pitot heat, there's also two holes in back here. All the holes want to be unobstructed. Anytime you remove a cover, make sure you put it on. Be very careful with anything that's hanging off the aircraft like this because you can't break it. At the same time, you can come up, check your angle of attack indicator. There again, pull off the probe and check for free play of the angle of attack. This will break if you grab it. Be very careful, it's very expensive. Once you have checked this thing, it's not moved, it's attached securely, go ahead and reinsert the probe cover and the key down and you're locked and ready to go. Inboard of the pitot heat and the angle of attack are the fuel caps for the external over-the-wing fueling, okay? You want to make sure this forward line on the cap is forward, facing into the relative wind as it would be in the air, and that this aft is flush. You don't need to actually check this. Don't move them, remove them yourself, but make sure that that is indeed in place. Moving down into the, again, the front part of the left main landing gear. You got to get down and dirty here, guys and girls. You want to check again that your nose wheel door is attached and secure. Check the general condition of the wheel well. You can check that this front scissor key on the main strut is cotter keyed. Check the general condition of the brakes. It's on the aft side of the wheel. Come inside again, make sure your wheel is cotter keyed and that you have all the appropriate bolts locked into place around the wheel. And check the front part of the tire for any major cord showing. Now what that means, if you can see little white things in here, it's bad. Otherwise it's good. Trust me. Up on top here, you can check your landing light. That it's not broken. Your landing light is attached. Come up and check your over-centering device. Now, if you pull on this, you'll feel a spring tension. Okay? That's how it should feel. It should be fairly hard to move. It shouldn't be loose. You have this protective cover over the inboard scissor, and then there again, coming up and making sure all these different little cords are not binding on any of their rollers. Kind of like little cams, like a Nautilus machine in a sense, the way it works here. And then again, come on the inboard side and make sure your internal door is secure also. Moving just forward of that, you'll find your peanut light, they call it, which is an external means of verifying that the gear is down or up. And that concludes the part here for the wheel. Inboard from the peanut light into the main section of the fuselage, we have another fuel drain, a fuel vent. Moving forward again, we've got a big bolt up here that charges the pitot system. The evaporator drain for the front cockpit. Moving just aft, we have the fuel sump drain. To release this drain, push the nose faster, you open it up, making sure you don't get underneath it, because if there's any fuel in this and you open it up and you're looking right up in there, have a tendency to get fuel on your face. Take a look directly up in here after you notice there's no fuel condensate laying on the ground, and check to make sure all the 5 or 6 bolts in here are actually lock wired. At that point, secure the fastener, move directly aft. You've got the P51 scoop for the rear cockpit outside air, the front cockpit transponder antenna, the relief tube, the rear cockpit condenser drain and the ram fuel vent.
I'm Lieutenant Vanderlyck, and I'll be taking you through some of the engine compartment components that you need to be aware of for the pre-flight inspection. Usually the first thing most guys do is check the oil level. The oil dipstick is located back here behind the ignition box. It's got a cap on it similar to the fuel cap. So just flip it up and then rotate it about a half a turn and then pull it out. You can check the fuel or the oil level on the dipstick, and it reads just like the one in your car. Min cold, max cold, which is the same as min hot, and then max hot. You want to check the level out, make sure that it's good to go. Then replace the dipstick facing the top of the oil cap back in the same direction, just like the fuel cap. Should be facing that. Check it secure. Of course, you have your ignition box here. You have your firewall fuel drain right here. You want to make sure it's in the aft position. Of course, normally if it's in the forward position, fuel will be draining out of the fuel drain. You have your air conditioner condenser here and the associated fan belt. When you pull the fan belt through, and you can hear the blades clicking in there if it's fairly quiet out. You have your fire detection sensor in the front here. You want to just check and make sure it's in place. Moving back to the forward section here, you have your engine bleed duct and your engine bleed air valve. You want to check this wire and make sure that it's curved over. This actually is connected to the cockpit environmental control, so you want to make sure that it's secure. Then check the overall compartment for FOD, any excessive leaking. You can look on the deck inside the engine compartment and see if there's any pools of liquid down there. If there is, you might want to have it checked out. That's about it for this side. Okay, when you're finished with the engine compartment, then you want to make sure that the cowling's securely fastened. Close the cowling, make sure it's cut, and then close the latch. Pull the cowling in, and you can see that it wasn't securely fastened, so we'll do it again. Alright, now this time we do it, pull the latches, it's secure, so we'll fasten the safety latches there, and you're good to go. Okay, the next thing you want to check is the pins and the locking nuts for the engine cowling. You want to make sure that the head of the pin is horizontal or parallel to the ground with the slot pin sticking out of the center. Next you want to check, you can also check this fairing for cracks. You have a series of nuts and washers that are torqued to a predetermined setting, and during cold days these could be loose. That's okay. Just make sure there's not any cracks. Check for cracks on the stack, up and down. A lot of times you'll find patches on these fairings where a crack's been repaired. You want to check them out real closely and make sure that new cracks haven't developed. Max is a 2-inch crack. Anything more than that, they can't just stop drill it, but anything less than that, they'll come out and stop drill it, and you can still go. Next thing you want to check is the propeller. First thing you want to look at is the nose cone. Make sure there's no big dents. The last guy that flew the airplane might have had a bird strike and forgot to post-flight. Check the nose cone and make sure there's no dents. The nose cone's fastened with these nuts here. You want to check all the way around and make sure they're securely fastened. You also want to check the propeller blades. Check the condition of the blade, make sure there's no large cord gouges or scratches on it. You also want to check the play of the prop. If you shake the prop this way, you'll feel a little bit of play, that's alright. If you check it, you don't want any motion in this kind of direction, so check that out. Next you want to look just behind the, inside the cone here, there's a series of safety wired nuts. Make sure they're all safety wired properly and that they're all securely in place. Check each propeller blade in order. One thing to keep in mind when you're working around a propeller aircraft is the prop arc. It's a dangerous place to be. During pre-flight, the propeller should move freely with the engine off. However, on a windy day, a gust of wind could take the propeller and move it in a fashion that tends to be dangerous. Or if you had a buddy on the other side, he might reach up there and crank that thing around. So be particularly careful whenever you're working around a propeller arc. It's a bad place to mess around. Next, you want to check the intake. You want to move the plug and check the intake for FOD. If no FOD exists, then you're in good shape and you can move on to the nose wheel. Okay, now you come around to the nose compartment section and you want to check the nose gear out. Check your nose gear fairing, also known as the gladiator shield. And it's got some bonding wires. You want to check and make sure that this is securely in place. Check the condition of the strut. and the scissors here. You got your nose gear safety switch, which has several functions, which you should have known from reading your NATOPS manual. Check your cotter pin on the scissor strut, and for the proper extension on the strut. Check the condition of the tire once again. It can be perfectly bald as long as no cord is showing. It's in good shape. And of course, this thing should be serviced to a maximum of 90 psi. Check your cotter pin on your nose gear tire here, and again, 3 little nuts in here, and also the service and cap should be in place. Check the shimmy dampener and make sure it's securely fastened, and check your gear doors. Okay, why don't you...
On the right-hand side of the engine compartment, it opens and closes, secures the same way as the left-hand side did. Generally, you're looking for the same items. In general, any FOD in the compartment, any fluid located on the bottom of the cell here. As far as specific items go in this compartment, consult your expanded checklist or the NATOPS book for amplifying information. That'll give you all you need to know about this side of the compartment. Just after the engine compartment is the battery. In the battery compartment, you're looking to make sure it's tied down, secured. The wire to the door is fastened, and that the drain itself is overboard. Make sure if there's any fluid on the compartment here, you don't actually reach in and touch it with your fingers. The battery acid will burn you. Amplifying information. This pin located right here wants to be securely fastened, otherwise this tray has a chance of sliding out. Once you're secure with the battery compartment, go ahead and close it. To get it closed, you've got to just slightly depress this fastener, secure it, same way. You're set. Moving slightly out of the battery compartment, you'll find the emergency canopy release handle. That's the external release to get into the aircraft if you were incapacitated. Do not reach up here and pull this particular item, as you will blow the canopy. The right-hand side of the window is done just like the left-hand side. So we're not going to go into specifics. Follow your NATOPS checklist, follow your procedures to the left side, and you check everything else the same. Okay, we're going to continue on aft to the aft end and the leading edge. Don't worry, it's almost Miller time. It's probably bumming you out, but we'll get done. Next thing you're looking at in the rear here is to make sure the oxygen blowout disc is still intact. It's this little disc right down here. If there wasn't anything there, you'd know it. Okay, this happens to be. Come up, check your nitrogen charge on your emergency canopy open system. It's calibrated in degrees Fahrenheit. As long as it's in the green, you're gold. You want to make sure that the needle is in the green. Falling further aft, in the middle of the star here is your static port for your pitot-static system. There again, don't touch it. You don't want your oil, your fingers, or grease, or anything else getting on this particular item. It'll clog up the system. Come up on the aft canopy here. You can check to make sure the rubber seal has no breaks or tears in it. That's real important so you don't get carbon monoxide and different gases into the cockpit itself. Check to make sure that's good. Check your UHF antenna, your ELF antenna, and then following up, you can always tell the VOR antenna because it looks like a V. This is a good time also to check the relative condition of the empennage. It should all be nice and smooth, nothing buckled, torn, ripped off, etc. Check your strakes and your fins down here at the bottom. Now, just like we did for the wing, we'll come up, check the relative condition of the wing, or the horizontal stab. Move back aft. There again, we'll check the body or the static discharge wicks. And a real easy way to check this is move this all the way up and kind of look down the line of the trim tab. There's a 9-degree split overall. The right side is 4.5 degrees up, the left-hand side is 4.5 degrees down. How do you tell 9 degrees on this? I'm not sure, but as long as the right one's up a little bit and the left one's down a little bit, you should be fine. Back here you'll see no push. That means don't push it. You guys probably knew that, didn't you? Okay. You want to check that this trim tab for the elevator is cotter keyed. Come up in here and check your little actuating rods. This is what we did before. Check to make sure the aft section here is secure. A lot of times they'll do maintenance on these things, and this thing has had a couple times when they forgot to bolt them back on, it's fallen off in your hands. On the rudder, the elevators have no action at all, no servo or anti-servo motion. The ailerons had servo motion. They moved in the opposite direction, which we're moving the ailerons in. The rudder has an anti-servo mechanism, which means as you move the rudder to the right, it also will move the trim tab to the right, and vice versa. Okay, so as you look at this, you should see it move in the same direction as you're moving the rudder. Check to make sure this bonding braid is attached to the bottom. Check you have a good cotter key on the actuating arm. And make sure your other static discharge wick on the top of the rudder is secure. A good idea to check also is to come down and take a look at the fins. Make sure, if a guy's been doing a lot of acrobatics, you get a plane after that. Sometimes you'll end up with a few pop rivets in back. So again, take a look and make sure there's no abnormalities in the metal. It's not hanging down partially. It doesn't come off in your hands. You don't need to jerk it around tremendously. Just make sure that it isn't stressed out of limits. Although the Navy maintains or strives to maintain our aircraft in utmost condition, every now and then you'll find spots of bird dew on here. Make sure you don't get that in your flight suit or your hands, as it could clog vital instrumentation within the aircraft itself. Moving along, on the left-hand side of the aircraft, you check your cotter key, you check your holes for your actuators for the elevators themselves. Come out, check your static discharge wicks, the same way you did the other side. And follow me around. And we check the leading edge of the empennage for the elevator itself. Following up, again, check your strakes. Make sure this half of the aircraft in the empennage section is nice and clean, no buckles, nothing missing that's obvious. Check this half of your canopy seal. Make sure that's good. The other half of your static port for your pitot static system. You can come up and check your so-called cargo compartment, which really is very small. The bad part about this airplane is you can't take your skis with you. Come inside. All these instruments, these electronic gear, are labeled. Just make sure when you move them around, they aren't sitting there not attached to anything. Make sure there's no dirty rags, anything else laying in there. All right, this concludes the pre-flight portion of this video. What we try to do is show you the general flow of the pre-flight, give you an idea of how to go about coming over here and practice. Again, you have to practice. I can't emphasize that enough. If you don't come over here and do as many of these things as it takes to become proficient, you're going to be behind the 8 ball for your B1. So good luck, keep pressing, and we'll see you flight side.
Here every night for the duration of the games, going behind the scenes to hope